Have you ever grabbed a slice of bread in the morning thinking it was the simplest, safest thing you could eat, without realizing it might be quietly putting stress on your kidneys? Because here's the truth. Most people never hear one of the most common types of bread in American households today may be triggering blood sugar spikes, increasing toxic load, and forcing your kidneys to work harder every single day. And it does it so silently that you won't feel a thing until real damage has already begun. I'm Dr. Lucas Grant, and over the years I've seen far too many patients who believed their diet was normal until early signs of kidney strain started to appear, often traced back to everyday choices they never questioned, like the kind of bread they ate every morning. But here's the good news. This is not about giving up bread, and it's not about extreme diets. It's about understanding which types of bread support your body, stabilize your blood sugar, and actually reduce the burden on your kidneys, and which ones you should seriously reconsider starting today. And once you see the difference, you may never look at your daily breakfast the same way again. Let's start with the foundation, the kind of bread most people think they already understand but almost always underestimate: whole grain bread. I want you to picture this for a second. A patient once told me, "Dr. Grant, I don't eat junk food. I just have toast every morning." It sounded harmless, simple, even healthy. But when we looked closer, that toast was refined white bread, and over time, his blood sugar had been quietly spiking every single day, putting constant pressure on his kidneys without him ever feeling it. Now here's where everything changes. Real whole grain bread is not just brown bread or something that looks healthier on the outside. It contains the entire grain, the bran, the germ, and the endosperm. And that one difference completely transforms how your body responds to it. Because inside those layers is fiber. And fiber is not just about digestion, it's one of the most powerful tools your body has to protect your kidneys. When you eat whole grain bread, that fiber slows down how quickly glucose enters your bloodstream. Instead of a sharp spike, you get a steady, controlled release. That matters more than most people realize. Because repeated blood sugar spikes are one of the fastest ways to damage the tiny filtration units inside your kidneys. In fact, a study published in the Clinical Journal of the American Society of Nephrology found that higher dietary fiber intake was directly associated with a slower progression of kidney function decline. Not a small difference, a meaningful one. And it doesn't stop there. Your gut and your kidneys are more connected than most people think. When your gut bacteria are healthy, they help break down waste more efficiently before it even reaches your bloodstream. That means fewer toxins traveling to your kidneys, and less work they have to do every single day. Whole grain bread feeds those beneficial bacteria. So now instead of just eating bread, you're actively supporting a system that reduces the toxic load on your kidneys from the inside out. But here's the part most people still get wrong. They walk into a store, pick up something labeled whole wheat, and assume they're making the right choice. But if the first ingredient says enriched flour or just wheat flour, it's not true whole grain. It's refined, just dressed up to look healthy. And that mistake, repeated every day, adds up. So here's a simple shift that actually matters. Look for bread with at least 3 grams of fiber per slice, less than 200 milligrams of sodium, and no added phosphates. That one decision made consistently can start to stabilize your blood sugar and reduce the silent strain on your kidneys. Now, I want to ask you something and be honest with yourself. Have you been eating what you thought was healthy bread without ever checking what's actually inside it? Because most people have. And the difference between thinking something is healthy and knowing it is can be the difference between protecting your kidneys and slowly wearing them down over time. But even if you get this part right, even if you switch to real whole grain bread, it still might not be enough. Because for many people, the real problem doesn't start with blood sugar, it starts deeper in how their body reacts to what they eat. And that's where the next type of bread changes everything. Now, even if you've already made the switch to whole grain, there's something deeper you need to understand, because for many people, the real issue isn't just blood sugar, it's inflammation. Let me explain. I once had a patient who was doing everything right on paper. Whole grain bread, balanced meals, no obvious junk food. But he kept feeling bloated, sluggish, and strangely fatigued after eating. He ignored it for months until routine tests showed early signs of systemic inflammation, and his kidney markers were starting to shift in the wrong direction. What we discovered surprised him. It wasn't the quantity of bread, it was how his body was reacting to gluten. Now, this doesn't apply to everyone. But for people with even mild gluten sensitivity, and many don't even realize they have it, the body treats gluten like a trigger. It irritates the gut lining, weakens the intestinal barrier, and allows inflammatory compounds to leak into the bloodstream. And once those compounds are in your blood, your kidneys have to deal with them every single day. Think of it like this. Your kidneys are already filtering waste from your body 24/7. But when your gut isn't functioning properly, you're adding an extra layer of toxins and inflammatory signals into the system. It's like asking an already busy filter to work overtime without giving it a break. Over time, that constant pressure adds up. A study published in Nutrients found that individuals with non-celiac gluten sensitivity who reduced gluten intake experienced a significant drop in inflammatory markers and improved gut barrier function. In simple terms, fewer toxins escaped into the bloodstream and less burden was placed on the kidneys. And here's where gluten-free bread comes in, but not in the way most people think. This isn't about jumping on a trend or assuming gluten is bad for everyone. It's about recognizing signals your body might already be giving you, subtle things like bloating, brain fog, fatigue, or digestive discomfort after eating bread. If that sounds familiar, your body might be asking for a different approach. High-quality gluten-free breads, especially those made from rice flour, oat flour, or almond flour, are often lower in phosphorus and easier to digest. That means less mineral overload and less stress on your kidneys, especially if they're already under pressure. But there's a catch. Many gluten-free products on the market are heavily processed, loaded with added sugars, preservatives, and phosphate additives that completely cancel out any potential benefit. So the real solution isn't just go gluten-free. It's choosing clean, simple, whole food-based options that actually support your system instead of confusing it. Now pause for a second and think about your own habits. Have you ever felt off after eating bread and just ignored it? Because if you have, you're not alone. And that one small signal might be more important than you think. But here's where it gets even more interesting. What if instead of removing something from your diet, you could transform it at its source? What if the grain itself could be changed in a way that makes it easier to digest, lowers its impact on your body, and reduces the burden on your kidneys before it even reaches your bloodstream? That's exactly what happens with the next type of bread, and almost no one is talking about it. But just knowing this still isn't enough, because there's another factor that could be even more powerful, and it starts at the level of the grain itself. Now, this is where things take a turn that most people never see coming, because what if the problem isn't just the type of bread, but the state of the grain itself before it even becomes bread? Let me show you what I mean. A patient once told me, "I've tried whole grain, I've tried gluten-free, but I still feel heavy after eating bread." At that point, we weren't just looking at ingredients anymore. We were looking at how that grain was processed at a biological level. And that's when we introduced something most people have never even heard of: sprouted grain bread. At first, it sounds like a small detail, but in reality, it changes everything. Because when a grain is allowed to sprout, when it begins to grow, a natural transformation happens inside it. Enzymes activate, complex compounds begin to break down. And one of the most important changes involves something called phytic acid. Now, this is critical. Phytic acid is naturally present in grains, and it binds to minerals like phosphorus. In regular bread, this can interfere with how your body handles those minerals, allowing more phosphorus to enter your bloodstream while reducing how efficiently it's used. And when phosphorus levels rise in the blood, your kidneys have to work harder to regulate it. Over time, that extra workload matters. But when grains are sprouted, phytic acid is significantly reduced. That means less phosphorus becomes bioavailable, less ends up circulating in your bloodstream, and your kidneys are under less pressure to filter it out. In other words, the grain itself becomes easier on your body before you even take a bite. And it doesn't stop there. Sprouted grain bread has been shown to produce a lower glycemic response compared to regular whole wheat bread. A study published in the Journal of Nutritional Science found that this type of bread leads to more stable blood sugar levels after eating. And by now, you already know why that matters. Stable blood sugar means less insulin spikes, less long-term damage to blood vessels, and better protection for the delicate filtration system inside your kidneys. But here's what most people overlook. It's not just about what's removed, it's also about what's gained. During the sprouting process, levels of certain vitamins, especially B vitamins and antioxidants, actually increase. These compounds play a role in protecting cells from oxidative stress, which is another key factor in kidney damage over time. So now instead of bread being a passive part of your diet, it becomes something that actively supports your system. Easier digestion, lower toxic load, more stable internal balance. And for many people, that's the missing piece they've been searching for without even realizing it. But let me ask you something. When was the last time you saw sprouted grain on a label and actually knew what it meant? Because this is one of those quiet upgrades, the kind that doesn't get advertised loudly, but makes a measurable difference over time. And once you understand it, it's hard to go back. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Because while sprouting transforms the grain from within, there's another process much older, much slower, that transforms the bread itself after it's made. And the effects go beyond digestion. But just knowing this still isn't enough, because there's another factor that could be even more powerful, and it begins with how the bread is fermented. Now, up to this point, we've talked about changing the grain. But what if the real transformation happens after the bread is made? Because there's a method one that's been around for thousands of years that doesn't just change how bread tastes, it changes how your body processes it entirely. Sourdough. And this is where things get fascinating. I remember a patient who told me bread always makes me feel heavy, except this one kind I had while traveling in Europe. He couldn't explain it. Same basic ingredients, flour, water, salt, but a completely different reaction in his body. The difference, it was real sourdough. Unlike modern bread that's made quickly with commercial yeast, sourdough goes through a slow natural fermentation process using wild yeast and beneficial bacteria. And that slow transformation is what makes all the difference. Because during fermentation, several things happen at once. First, the glycemic index drops. That means instead of spiking, your blood sugar, sourdough leads to a slower, more controlled rise. And by now, you already understand stable blood sugar is one of the most important factors in protecting your kidneys long-term. Second, the fermentation process begins to break down gluten and other hard-to-digest compounds. Not completely, but enough to make the bread significantly easier on your digestive system. And when digestion improves, fewer inflammatory compounds make their way into your bloodstream, and your kidneys don't have to work as hard to filter them out. But here's the part most people never hear about. Those beneficial bacteria involved in fermentation, they don't just disappear. They help support your gut microbiome, creating an environment where good bacteria thrive. And your gut is directly connected to your kidneys. A healthier gut means better breakdown of waste, fewer toxins entering circulation, and less overall burden on your filtration system. In fact, research published in Food Microbiology has shown that sourdough fermentation can significantly reduce compounds that interfere with nutrient absorption while improving metabolic responses after eating. So now this isn't just about bread anymore. It's about a chain reaction inside your body. Better fermentation leads to better digestion, leads to fewer toxins, leads to less stress on your kidneys. And suddenly something as simple as choosing a different type of bread becomes a powerful daily decision. But here's where many people get misled. Not all sourdough is real sourdough. A lot of what you see in stores is just regular bread with added acids or flavoring to mimic that tangy taste without the actual fermentation process. No real bacteria, no real benefits. So if you're going to make this switch, it has to be authentic, simple ingredients, slow fermentation, nothing artificial. Now think about this for a moment. What if the foods you've been eating your whole life weren't the problem, but the way they were made? Because sometimes the answer isn't removing something from your diet, it's returning to how it was meant to be made in the first place. And yet, even with all these better options, whole grain, gluten-free sprouted sourdough, there is still one type of bread that continues to dominate daily diets. One that looks harmless, feels familiar, and is quietly doing the most damage of all. But just knowing this still isn't enough, because there's one final factor, and it may be the one that ultimately determines whether your kidneys stay healthy or slowly begin to fail. And now, we need to talk about the one bread that almost everyone trusts, the one that feels harmless, familiar, even comforting, but may be doing the most damage behind the scenes. White bread, it's soft, it's convenient, it's everywhere. And for many people, it's been a daily habit for years, sometimes decades, without a second thought. But here's what's really happening beneath the surface. White bread is made from refined flour, which means the most important parts of the grain, the bran and the germ, have been completely stripped away. What's left is almost pure starch, no meaningful fiber, very few nutrients, nothing to slow down how your body processes it. So the moment you eat it, your blood sugar rises fast. And I don't mean a gentle increase, I mean a sharp spike followed by a crash. And when that pattern repeats day after day, your body starts to adapt in ways you don't want. Insulin levels surge. Cells become less responsive. Over time, this leads to insulin resistance, and that's where the real damage begins. Because sustained high blood sugar doesn't just affect energy levels, it directly damages the tiny filtration units inside your kidneys. This is how diabetic kidney disease starts. Quietly, gradually, often without symptoms in the early stages. And by the time most people realize something is wrong, the damage is already there. But blood sugar is only part of the story. Many commercial white breads are also loaded with sodium and phosphate additives, ingredients used to improve texture and shelf life, but that come at a cost to your body. Phosphate additives in particular are absorbed very efficiently into the bloodstream, and when levels build up, your kidneys are forced to work harder to remove the excess. Over time, that constant extra workload adds strain. A study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that high consumption of refined grains, including white bread, was associated with a faster decline in kidney function, especially in older adults. So what looks like a simple food becomes a daily trigger. Blood sugar spikes, mineral imbalance, increased filtration pressure. And the most concerning part, you don't feel it happening. No pain, no warning. Just a slow, silent accumulation of stress on an organ that's already working nonstop to keep you alive. Now, I want you to pause for a second. Think about how often white bread shows up in your routine breakfast toast sandwiches, quick meals when you're busy. Have you ever stopped to question it? Because most people don't. Not until something forces them to. And here's the truth. This isn't about fear. It's about awareness. Because once you see what's actually happening, you have a choice. You can keep repeating the same pattern, or you can make one small change that shifts the direction of your health over time. And that choice starts with something as simple as the bread you pick up next time you're at the store. If there's one thing I want you to take away from today, it's this: you don't need to overhaul your entire life to start protecting your kidneys. Sometimes it begins with something as simple and as small as the kind of bread you choose each day. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to get everything right overnight. But choosing whole grain instead of white, trying sourdough, or switching to sprouted grain when you can, these are the kinds of decisions that quietly add up day after day in your favor. Because your kidneys are working for you every second, filtering, balancing, protecting, even when you don't feel it. And the truth is, they deserve that same level of care in return. So if this video gave you a new perspective, do yourself a favor, save it. Come back to it the next time you're at the store or when you're about to make your next meal. And if you want more simple, research-based ways to protect your kidney health and take control of your body before problems start, make sure you subscribe to the channel. We're here to give you clear, practical information, the kind that actually makes a difference in real life. Because it's never too early and never too late to start making choices that support your health. And the best part, your body responds faster than you think, especially when you finally give it what it truly needs.